he's ready to go.
Okay, welcome to the ordinary meeting of council tonight, and I'll get the general manager to read the recording of the meeting.
This council meeting is being recorded in accordance with council's webcasting of council's meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you are in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded and also that you will abide by the council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager have the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches council's adopted code of meeting practice.
Thank you. Okay, could I have all those who are able to please stand for the prayer and the acknowledgement of country. Thank you. Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all people in the way of righteousness and peace, so we may share with justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust and seek the common good. Amen. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. Thank you. General Manager, is there any apologies?
Mr. Mayor, there are no apologies.
I have a move and a second for that. Councillor North, Councillor Christian. Put the motion, those in favour, carried. Item number 5, the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Bathurst Regional Council on the 17th of June. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor North. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, carried. Item number 6, declaration of interest. General Manager, do we have any?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 declarations of interest, one from Councillor North in the Director of Corporate Services confidential, number 2, and one from Councillor Jennings, the Director of Cultural and Community Services ordinary report, number 1.
I have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Fry, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, carried. Item number 7, deal with the General Manager and Directors' reports. General Manager's report, meeting of the 4th of June 2020. Could I please have a move and a second? Councillor North, Councillor Christian. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 2, the Aboriginal Cultural and Heritage. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Director of Environmental and Planning Building Services report. Section 1, 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Can I please have a move and a second? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Fry. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 2, the general report. Could I please have a move and a second? Councillor Rudge, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 3, development application number 2020/161 of a demolition of an existing dwelling, tree removal, construction of a single-storey replacement dwelling and separate garage at 206 William Street, Bathurst. Could I please have a move in a second? Councillor North, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to talk about this house because this is one of those examples of really demolition by neglect. It's in the block that I live close to, and I have for the last 15 or more years walk past that house on a regular basis when I take my dogs for a walk. I would say almost daily I walk past that house. And I know the business on the left-hand side as you're looking at it. And it has been a great shame that it's been allowed to deteriorate to that extent. I know there have been complaints about rats, about the way it's just demolished, about gutters and all sorts of things. But not demolished, but allowed to deteriorate. At one time, I have spoken to the Department of Planning and suggested that particularly that house and a house that almost backs onto it in Bentinck Street be advised of the money that's available through council for heritage activities. But there's also another point. Nobody really has bothered about that house, Mr. Mayor. I know we've had comments from the National Trust about the way that houses are allowed to deteriorate, but they don't seem to do anything or give assistance or bring it to people's notice when they are concerned about the house deteriorating. The National Trust seems to be upset when we agree to demolish it. The other point that I'd like to raise about this house is that the people who've bought it have gone out of their way to make plans to build something that's going to fit in with the streetscape. It does have an access at the back, which they can use and add some additions at the back. But the streetscape, I think, is going to look very nice. And I think it would be very wrong of council to penalise the people who bought it and want to do good things rather than the owner who allowed it to get to that state. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I wish there was something we could do to make those owners look after their houses. There's nothing in the law, the state government doesn't help us in a heritage city, and there's nothing we can do to make the owners. I don't know who the owners were, I have no idea. But I just wish that we could do something to make those owners look after their houses in our conservation area. So reluctantly I say yes, it should be demolished. I am very comfortable with what the new owners are going to do with it. It's going to look very nice in the streetscape of William Street, which is our major street up to the Mount Panorama and the university. So I am happy to support what council has said, but I'm very disappointed that nothing has been done before now.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other discussion? Councillor Jennings?
I concur with Councillor Morse's comments, and I just wanted to add a comment to the process, less so the content, but in this report we've got quite a lot of the words quoted from the Statement of Heritage Impact, and if I recall correctly, that was usually left as an interpretation and a shorter summary, and there was some even controversy as to whether or not those heritage impact statements be made public. And I think the fact that there's more detail in there, more words in there, gives us a better sense of the condition of these sorts of buildings. And I think it's good that that information be out there in the public domain, and the sky hasn't fallen in as a result of that content being in there. So I must say I prefer this process than what we've had, and we've definitely improved to move to this.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Any other discussion? Councillor North?
Yeah, look, I fully concur with what the other councillors have said. And look, I think we get down to one basic point, that we can't save everything, but we save what we can save. And if we can save it in such a way that we can understand and accept what was there in the past. And I'll never forget back to our 200 years, and we were fortunate enough to meet Lord and Lady Bathurst, and I've said it a few times, when they made the comment, what a wonderful city and wonderful architecture here that you have. So as much as we get knocked, that we have knocked down things in the past, and we don't want to see it happen, it's nice to see that there seems to be a change in culture, that people are getting in there and they're trying to recreate what was there, understand what was in the past, and move forward in the future and accept it. And when you have people come from a country that is a lot older than ours, that has wonderful architecture, and they say something like that, we must be doing something right. We can't save everything. Unless this becomes a council with an absolute heap of money that we can help these people, these buildings, unfortunately, this is going to occur. But if we can lessen the amount of times it does occur, it can only be better for Bathurst. So I think this is the best outcome we could come with.
Thank you, Councillor North. Any more discussion? If not, I'll call a division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, Vision Bathurst 2040, Bathurst Regional Local Strategic Planning, Councillor North. Okay.
I just want to have added that I'll explain more detail, but if we could look at investigate the suitability of the Gilmore Street corridor for future planning directions of his council. I think a submission that was put in does have merits into the future, but into the Gilmore Street area.
Thank you, Councillor North. I get a seconder for that. Councillor Christian. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very important document that has to be submitted to the government in a timely fashion. I believe the deadline is either August or September. I am really unhappy with having an amendment put to this council tonight about an investigation which I know nothing about areas that could be subject to flooding. I have spoken to the Director of Planning and tried to find out what it involves. I do not have enough information to make an amendment to this very important document to do it on the run like we're being asked to tonight. I really think that this should not be brought at the last minute. It is 10 minutes into a council meeting and I've never heard about what is being proposed. And I think it's quite wrong that we are asked to make a decision at this time, at this meeting, for this important document which has to be in. We cannot defer it. I would not even countenance deferring this document. But I do not think that as councillors we should be asked to decide on something which I really don't know enough about. And I don't think we should amend it. I think we should adopt it as it is. I think we should then have a working party to look at what involves investigation.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor North.
Councillor Morse, I'll answer that. As a lot of councillors in their time here have brought amendments in on the floor, and you've done it yourself at times. If you've read all the submissions in there, this was a submission that we all got approached by this person, but I didn't look at it as his submission. I looked at it overall of that Gilmore Street area, and went up and down there and looked at the development has taken place. I looked at the points that were raised about it, and I've had a chat to the director about it. And what an investigation means, it is not changing the local strategic planning document, but what it is basically, if I can put the analogy, it's like you've got a team in place and you've got a set of reserves. You've got a set of reserves there, but if this city is going to continue to look to the future, that we've got to understand, like this council has been brought before us, the Laughing Waters area, future expansions in a totally different style. We've looked at Eglinton in a different way than we've ever done before. And the same thing with this, and if all the councillors, I'm sure I would have done, was read all the submissions, there's some really, really interesting submissions. And what I picked up on this one, I'm going to talk about a couple of others in here, that is the Gilmore Street precinct. If you look up there, some of the units that have been built on Gilmore on the corner and the church there, then as you go up further up Hereford Street, some more units. If what this gentleman is suggesting, if it's flood protected and we've done the work and we need to further investigate it, because I think the Director of Engineering, we're required to do some flood models and planning, I think, if that's the right way to put it, moving forward. But what I don't want to ever see is documents where people have taken the time, and I think, if everyone who's read these documents, there's a lot of really good commentary being put there. And I put this as, this is the reserves on the bench that we investigate when we've got the time. Our priority is this document. But any councillor here that has an idea, and I know Councillor Fry has a potential amendment that he's got, but it allows us as councillors to say, oh, also that was said, look, when we can, and basically the way we're moving forward as a city, because if we think where we were 10 years ago to where we are now, we're very different. Our directions are changing. Everyone that was at the meeting with I think he was the outgoing director of Department of Planning. I think it was last year. Was it when he came here, or was it this year? Chief Planner. And that gentleman, I think we all would have picked up, anyone who's been around for a while, that planning is actually looking further to the future, and they're taking their blinkers off. They're taking their blinkers off and they're starting to say, how can we help regions and areas grow? We're not going to help them grow with further red tape. We're not going to help regions develop and be sustainable if we don't acknowledge. Now, what it says, it's an investigation. Read it for what it is. It is on the reserves bench, ready, and Councillor Fry, from what I understand, what he has, if you go through the documents, and there's one in there, if you look at item 18, which, I can say it was a bit provocative about Wimbledale Rivulet and Wimbledale Dam. But what they don't think that that water supply, not to be at the expense of the environment, the water security for our city should not be expense of the environment. Now, that's a pretty big statement. We're trying to protect our city, and we've got people saying that. But that's their opinion. We've got to understand that. Then we look later on, and the Bathurst Cycling Club, that they want to look to the future. We're known as a cultural, a heritage city. We're also known as, home of motorsport. We're also known that we're a very diverse and mixed community that really works together. The cycling group is saying, well, we need to continue to work to the future. And a lot of the documents we're looking at, it's been very supportive. The National Trust, you said before. The National Trust document I found is a very good document looking forward. And a lot of the things, they don't always agree with what we say, but nearly everything they've said there, everything they've said in that document, we're ever working on, we're in discussions with them, we've got planning documents. A lot of people have put a lot of effort into this. And a question to the director, the only thing I'm concerned about, this is one of the best lot of submissions I've seen for a while, I'd hate to see the submissions that haven't grabbed a lot of attention as such within our document. How can we make sure going into the future that those documents are there for future councils and this council as we move forward with this document?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, council staff were very pleased with the level of interest and the quality of the submissions that were received. A number of those have been factored in to the amendments to the LSPS, but others didn't fit. They weren't for the purpose of land use planning. But you're right, they shouldn't be lost. So there's a couple of suggestions I can make. One is that when the LSPS is reviewed, then that could be looking back at the submissions that were made and have they been accommodated. That review process can be done informally. It can also be done as part of the next community strategic plan, where some of these suggestions might better fit. Some of them are operational matters, and we've taken the liberty of referring those to other departments for their consideration. It is important that the corporate memory capture these ideas and that they not be lost. The mechanism to do that, though, we might need to think through a bit more.
Thank you.
I'll take a question.
I'd like to ask the Director of Planning, is this land, which has been called the Gilmore Corridor, but I understand that the particular land in question is owned by a developer, is this currently zoned flood prone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the land which is the subject of the submission is zoned in, part of it is zoned recreation land, the former St Pat's land, and part of it is zoned rural. So the zoning doesn't go to the extent of flood affectation. However, there is flood mapping which indicates that part of that land is flood protected. That is, it's now protected by a recently constructed levee bank. The connection with flood studies, I think, is important, but not prohibitive. That the advice from the Department of Planning, which is included in the report as an attachment, indicates that the flood study of council needs to be reviewed before the Department of Planning can contemplate a rezoning. What's being requested and proposed in the amendment is that the land not be rezoned yet, but rather it be investigated, presumably with that potential in mind. So it's a little bit of what comes first, but certainly one of the steps prior to a serious investigation of the development potential of any of the lands that are flood protected is that the flood study of council be reviewed.
Okay, back to you. No, but
Is this the only area of land in Bathurst that would require an investigation? Are we cutting off other areas that would like an investigation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. The recommendations before you, the LSPS, which went on exhibition and which is now before you for adoption, includes an additional investigation area, which is the Raglan Hill corridor, where there have been development proposals in the past which council has declined to pursue, and which we have development applications live, and so the recommendation of council staff is that that corridor also be the subject of an investigation area. The point of difference between the two, the Gilmore Street lands proposed and the Raglan Hill corridor, is that the Gilmore Street lands include flood protected land, which would be the require the review of the flood study to be a precursor to any further decisions. That doesn't prevent investigation commencing or being put on a schedule of works for some time in the future.
well, how many questions you going to have? Okay then.
I would just like to know that is it possible to hold a working party to discuss this and other matters which I understand Councillor Fry is going to raise, and out of a working party, by the end of the year, prepare another report to council that would address these issues? Is it possible to have a working party?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that would be by council's direction, yes.
Yes, you can finish, Councillor.
And Councillor Morse, I'll reiterate, it is not just the land that's brought up here. It's the Gilmore Street area that, if you want to put a precinct or corridor, that a lot of that has become land flood protected. We've seen development go up further. As I said, I'll go over it again. We have gone and looked at how this city is going to continue to grow. And as I said, the analogy is that this is a document. This is not forming part of a document except to be the guys on the reserve bench, that we understand that this is worthy. I believe it's worthy, that precinct, to be looked at moving forward, because we also, as a group of councillors here, are saying that the Hereford Street area is a massive problem with traffic coming in and out. So there was things even within his application that, and he's spoken to us about that. He acknowledges that, and we've spoken about different paths. So my amendment is about that Gilmore Street. That got me thinking about that area and potentially moving on. And it doesn't change anything. And I'll be blowed if I'm a councillor that I can't bring up an amendment at a council meeting. And if you're not comfortable as a councillor, you vote no against it. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have an amendment, which is Amendment A, and we've just discussed Amendment B. And I'm not sure whether we vote on two amendments or work that out later. So my amendment is that the director produces a report to council, establish the feasibility, or basically establishing a renewable energy and associated industries corridor along the east-west transmission line through the Bathurst region, and there's 4 of them.
Well, Councillor North said he's able to
Sorry.
add.
I need a seconder.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could I suggest that Councillor Fry mentions the 2 changes that he wishes, and then if the original mover and seconder are happy with that, then we'll include it in the motion.
We'll be voting on 2 amendments.
No, 1.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have an amendment on the table. What we have is an original motion from Councillor North and Councillor Christian, which has slight changes to what is recommended by the staff, because what's in your business paper is not a motion, it's a recommendation. Can I suggest, Councillor Fry, that you specify what you are seeking, and one of them you've spoken about is the renewable energy corridor. And then if the mover and the seconder are happy, then we'll include that into the worded motion.
Okay, so I'll address point A, that council prepare a report on a renewable energy corridor which will enable creating probably animosity between different landowners. So if we had a stable, clear policy along that corridor on what properties were willing to have, say, renewable energy or associated industries on that property, I think we'd get a better planning outcome, because the part of the corridor that's being currently talked about is from Safala Road along 11 Mile Drive to Germinal Road. That corridor has obviously been mentioned in our plans for further residential development. So I think it's urgent now that we look at those other uses for this corridor, because they've only just emerged with the submission from Neon Energy, which is really, I guess, it's taken me by surprise, thinking that it's going to be a residential corridor along there. Now there's conflicting uses. So I think for the sake of good planning, we need to urgently present a report at the earliest possible moment to council and amend or add to the council's current renewable energy action plan, which is a live document, as we've been told last meeting, that we look at how we enable our local contractors and businesses to capitalise and be prepared for this renewable energy boom, which is upon us already. And I don't want to see Bathurst miss out on this, because, as we know, there's the first renewable energy zone is around Dubbo, and they're ahead of the game on us. They've got $1 billion for infrastructure. That's mostly poles and wires, but those poles and wires upgrade enable them to put more renewable energy into their region, and there's more jobs and more construction. And the second one is Armidale. I understand they're getting $2 billion. They're the second renewable energy zone. And I think, why isn't Bathurst going to be the third? We should be the third renewable energy zone, and we should get our $1 billion for infrastructure upgrades. So if we get those transmission lines upgraded, like the other two zones, that will enable us to put far more renewable energy into the grid at this point. Other industries, big energy users, will then come to this city knowing there's an established renewable energy network, and I understand it will have batteries, and people want reliable power. And if there's batteries and renewables here at a cheap price, and they're only going to get cheaper, that will attract the next generation of industries to Bathurst. And I just don't want us to miss out on the boat on this. So that's why I'm putting this amendment forward, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Any more discussion? Councillor Hanger?
Yeah, can I?
No, you're right, Councillor Hanger. Yeah, next. Councillor Hanger, please.
Thank you. Can I just ask a couple of questions? Ask the director, how long did it take, and approximately how much cost to produce this document, Vision Bathurst 2040, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a work in progress undertaken by council staff for a solid 6 months, but the preliminary work was commenced prior to that. It does pull together planning documents from integrates a number of other planning documents as well. So the cumulative effect of that is a significant amount of internal work. which of course is very difficult to put a price on, the number of staff hours, etc. But it's a very important document. I'm very pleased with the how it reads, the messages it sends. In other words, it's priceless.
Thank you.
Dare I say, Mr. Mayor, a MasterCard moment.
Councillor Hanger, finish.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That indicates that a lot of time and effort has gone, and I'm, like Councillor Moore, slightly disappointed that at a minute to midnight we're now not one but two. One of them of these additions I may or may not be interested in, or both I may or may not be interested in. But to have them come at this hour, at, as I say, a minute to midnight, is just a little bit disappointing. Could I ask a question? If Councillor North's addendum, what happens then if that is included? What happens? What's the process, and what is the cost if that happens? Please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The immediate result is that the document, the LSPS, and particularly the maps which reflect the intent, will be amended to show an additional investigation area. The consequences of that may raise expectations that all this work will automatically happen to commence an investigation. It's already been mentioned in discussion that it needs to be prioritised with all of the other projects which council needs to progress with. But being in the LSPS gives it a status higher for the landowners than would otherwise be the case. To actually conduct the investigation, I'll need to separate into multiple parts, because there's a significant amount of work that would be required as part of that investigation. The single biggest part of that is a review of the flood study, which I'll refer to Director of Engineering for details. But that is a big project, an expensive project, hundreds of thousands of dollars of specialist consultant time, which is eligible for state government funding if it is considered a priority by the state. So that would be a monetary contribution to achieve that. My understanding is that council has requested that funding and the state has declined so far. But there's other bodies of work that will need doing as well, particularly the future of the Hereford Street corridor, which councillors, you have identified as a priority for upgrading of the road network. That work needs doing as well. Then there's, will any of this have an impact on the shopping centre, the retail precinct? Will any of this have an impact, well, yes it will, on the character of Gilmore Street, how people enjoy the vistas that they currently drive past? And so all of those elements will form part of quite a robust investigation. It will be expensive and time consuming, but identifying it in the LSPS as an investigation area does not necessarily commit to a particular priority. That would be the subject of council's budget process.
Yeah, thank you, Director. You did mention the Director of Engineering. I'm just wondering if the Director of Engineering has any further to add about the flood plain management.
Through Mr. Mayor, the current floodplain management plan was last updated in 2007, which originated from its original plan of 1993, which took a number of years to develop. So the passage of time, there's certainly new standards that exist, and so that's the trigger for New South Wales planning to require an updated floodplain management plan model to be developed. The model itself, we have applied for funding through what was the Office of Environment and Heritage in last year's funding round. We were advised at that stage we were unsuccessful. Given that the priorities of the state government are for councils to prepare floodplain management plans for areas that currently don't have one. The second priority that they have is for construction of infrastructure such as levees, which we've got funding for Perthville, which we're currently doing at the moment. The funding pool is reasonably small. Last year was council wish to proceed with that, it would need to work it out who's going to fund it. We have got a current application in with Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, which has absorbed the old Office of Environment and Heritage, but we await the outcome of that application.
Yeah, question, Councillor Fry.
The Council North's amendment could be putting the cart before the horse, and we do need a floodplain management plan before we look at uses on the periphery on the floodplain and rezonings. But I'm generally in favour of it. But Mr. Engineer, with the climate modelling we're seeing coming out of CSIRO and BOM, there's a strong possibility of getting higher flood peaks less often. Is that your understanding of what could happen in our catchment going forward under climate change conditions, referencing the science, that we could get higher flood peaks than we've ever achieved before, that in living memory? Is it possible?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's difficult to answer that. Certainly in terms of some of the experiences that we've seen on other councils, in some particular flood models with the new modelling requirements, some flood peaks have increased, some have decreased. And so it's difficult to say what will happen for the Bathurst catchment until the work is done. So I can't provide that advice.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment?
General Manager will make a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, what I think in talking about getting the cart before the horse, my take on the position put by Councillor North, which is appropriate actions and amendments to Figure 3 of the LSPS to investigate the suitability of Gilmore Street corridor for new urban purposes and urban intensification. It's a request to investigate. It is not necessarily at this time an intention to spend. Whereabouts monies would be required, for instance, a floodplain management, if that's updated plan, that would come back to the council for discussion. So really what the position here at the moment is to say, let's have a look at it, and part of that look at it maybe come back to council and say, these are the actual implications of this process for decision to be made. At this stage, what's not being contemplated with this would be that we would go out and commission a pile of studies. It would be that the staff would have a look and put together what is the parameters and what would be required. That may come some concern in this area.
Thank you. Anything? No, Councillor Hanger, anyone? Anyone?
Just
Excuse me, you've had your time to speak, Councillor Morse.
No, I want a question from
question?
the General Manager. Yes, please. When we're voting, I would like to know what we're voting on. We want to adopt this vision, this
Excuse me, Councillor Morse. Let the other councillors have it.
I don't know what we're voting on.
Yes, but all the councillors haven't had a chance to discuss it. Councillor, no.
I don't know what we're voting on.
Councillor Rudge is waiting to discuss it.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak on behalf of the request from Councillor Fry. I understand that he's trying to put some order into the development of renewable energy projects and to facilitate energy-hungry developments whilst protecting agricultural land. And I think that's a very, very important point that we need to look at. I think there is a first thing, I think we need to avoid the first thing, best dressed. And I do think we need to look at protecting agricultural land. And I think that's come up with a few viewpoints from various councillors due to solar farms and other renewable energy. So I think that his request is quite important that we put in there. And I'd just like to say that I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. Is there any other councillors for discussion? Councillor Orban.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just nothing to do with the amendments.
just on one of the points in the community priorities, and the director mentioned it before, was investigation of the development potential of lands along the Sydney Road, so obviously on our Raglan Hill. And it says here that investigation and development potential of lands may be developer-led. Now, are we looking at, because I know it was probably a couple of years ago now that we actually put a parcel of land through for rezoning, which ultimately got knocked back. The council actually voted for it to be rezoned, but it came back and it got knocked back for some reason. Would this block of land again go up for rezoning, investigation into the rezoning for a housing estate?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be to investigate whether rezoning should occur. That particular parcel or parcels of land, but how that integrates with the whole of that corridor right through to the airport on the largely northern side of the Sydney Road.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Orban. Any other discussion? If not, I'll get the General Manager to explain for you. Dave to explain what we're doing first.
Mr. Mayor, I take it that the motion on the table is that Council A adopt Bathurst Vision 2040, Bathurst Region Local Strategic Planning Statement, inclusive of A, an alteration to Action 14.2 to read, to maintain an up-to-date renewable energy action plan for Council's operations and for the Bathurst region. And B, appropriate actions and amendments to Figure 3 of the LSPS to investigate the suitability of the Gilmore Street corridor for new urban purposes and or urban intensification. B, note that a further report will be presented to Council on establishing a renewable energy and associated industries corridor along the 4 east-west transmission lines through the Bathurst region. C, notify those who lodge submissions of Council's decision. D, forward a copy of Bathurst Vision 2040, Bathurst Region Local Strategic Planning Statement to the New South Wales Department of Planning, Industry and Environment. And E, call a division.
Yes, you can close now, Councillor North.
I'd still like to ask a question, if I may, on the procedure.
No.
If we vote against for that, is the whole thing lost?
Excuse me, Councillor Hanger. I'm chairing this.
I just would like to know, if we vote against it, do we then lose the whole recommendation? Do we lose the whole thing?
Yes, answer it, gentlemen.
If this motion is defeated, then it's up to the Council to move another motion in this meeting.
Right, I'll get Councillor North to finish it off now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was interesting, the commentary. But look, basically, I was fully aware that we have a policy in place that's 13 years old. There is a policy that the director with our flood management needs to be looked at, because things have to be changed. As you would already have heard, they are already chasing funding for that work to be done. You know, back in the early days as a council, we were spoken about the plans in place, and I think it was a 20-year vision. And it's taken quite a while to get where we are now to virtually be finished out at Purfall now. But as Councillor Fryer said, the changing conditions, the environment we live in, the potential of higher flood events, they're all, you know, as the answer was, you can't predict it, but there is a potential for things we are seeing changing. So if we're looking at changing and reviewing policies and that in place, and we have an area of Bathurst, which also, if everyone read their documents, people were worried about the land we were losing, farming land and agricultural land out there because of the developments of this city. Here's a corridor, potentially, and that's only one parcel of land, which I'll keep reiterating. From that suggestion, why don't we look along there that is flood protected? Because if we're saying we don't want to move too far out and we want to create these areas and create different housing and different opportunities for people, if areas that we're flood protected and the models come in, a model that we need to have reviewed Don't forget that. It has to be done. We had to find the money, council, sooner or later to do it. It doesn't mean it'll be done now, but if we're going to do it, and if this is, as I'll keep saying, like Councillor Fry's thing, these other ones have been added in here, but we need to look at. He's quite right. We need to look at the future. All of a sudden, we've got interest in a couple of areas in this area on renewable energy. I wish we had been the first to take off on it, but third, well, I can accept that, but let's do it. If the opportunity's there and we're going to be chasing our director of engineering, and, you know, when I found out from him that, you know, they're already in place, they're trying to chase some money. Why not look at that at the same time? Better use of the money, better use of the development of this city moving forward, better choices of options that people have and where they live and how they live, and allow this city to grow. And that's where it comes from. One guy's submission, but I looked a bit further. I wandered down that street, had a look, and I thought, well, why don't we look at that whole area? If that's flood protected, why are we not looking at the potential of that land? So it's an investigation. It doesn't grab any great clarity in here that we're going to spend money, and all these studies are studies that we need to do for the future of this city. And basically, that's what it's about. Let's make sure if the opportunity is there to progress this city, let's not miss an opportunity while we're going to go through a new floodplain study, but we investigate an area just up the road. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor North. No more discussion. Now I'm going to put the motion and call on the division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go on to item number 5, New South Wales Government 16 Cities Program. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Christians, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor Rudge?
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is very exciting that Bathurst has been included in one of the 16 cities under the program. To treat key priority Bathurst for the local bus services. I know with our plans in the future, we're looking at possibly having a less vehicular access or vehicular movement within the CBD, and this is really a great step forward. Look, we're looking at improving Bathurst from 3% to 17%, and that's anticipated within a period of 12 months. So I think this is a really big step forward, and I'm very, very glad to see that the New South Wales Government has included Bathurst in the 16 Cities program. So thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that's important because we're an ever-ageing population, and a lot of people haven't got vehicles or don't want to drive vehicles into the CBD, and I think this is a great step forward for our public transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Councillor North?
The question first. The long-term future of something like this, it's great to be part of the 16 and the discussions this council's had with the town centre plan, and that is government has committed future funding for what, 5-10 years? Is it going to be reviewed? Have we got any feel of how this is going to operate?
Through you, Mr Mayor, not with huge confidence. It's very difficult to have the state commit to long-term funded projects in Bathurst, but it's a good start. And indeed, it dovetails in with the work underway with the town centre master plan to make it a more pedestrian friendly, make it a place where people can move around easily, catch the bus if that's more convenient, cycling, active transport, and so on. So we remain, and it is this type of planning is featuring across other departments of both the state and of course council as well. So quietly confident, but no guarantees.
Yes.
So, okay, look, we hope it does take off in that, and I guess it's a part of a program in respect that I think there's a bus link going out to Trunky Creek, and I think what they've done with the Bullet, and I think a bus service too. So it's good to see this sort of thing. Have we figured, Mr. General Manager, in the future more bus shelters and things like that? I hope it takes off. Have we started to identify if we're going to have this once the new routes get in? Are we going to be starting to fund bus shelters and safe and secure areas for people waiting to get on and off buses that's lit properly and all that, because it looks like it's going to be a great service. It's going to service the city for a good number of hours of the day. And I just wondered, is there funding with this service that also helps the councils with, which I think we need to have that sort of infrastructure?
Mr Mayor, we always put some money in the council budget each year, but there's certainly a government scheme whereabouts we get money for bus stops. You might recall the work that was done out at the Kelso High School. So the engineers are always looking to see what money is available there. Part of the thing will be waiting to see what is in the delivery plan for the area, and then from that we can shape it into the next budget process.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a question, really. I know the New South Wales government is in the process for some years now trialling autonomous shuttles, and I think there'd be plenty of scope for a CBD shuttle service and potentially a shuttle service down Keble Street to the railway station and back to the CBD. Does this program have scope for autonomous shuttles and the technology that is already available on the market, or is that just for the city people?
Through Mr Mayor, it is being talked about. Some people believe that it's imminent, that these sorts of technologies will be available in regional areas. Other people believe will be late adopters. But certainly accommodating those new technologies, we should be able to accommodate those new technologies when they do become commercially available. And prior to that, there's conversations occasionally about whether Bathurst could pilot some of those before they become commercially available.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Any other councillor? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 7, backyard bird count results for 2019. Oh, item number 6, Bathurst Regional Heritage Assistance Funds and Heritage Advisory Services. A mover and a second. Councillor North. Councillor Fry. Any discussion? If not, I'll put Rudge. Councillor Rudge. Sorry.
I think it's very important to note that during 2019-20 that 139 site visits were undertaken by the Heritage Advisor. Obviously, there's a need out there for site inspections and for referrals and assistance. And I think Bathurst Regional Council needs to be congratulated for the Bathurst Heritage Advisory Service and the 3 heritage assistance funds that they have available. Obviously, it's very popular and it's very important for a city such as Bathurst with our heritage protection. And obviously, the people or the residents in town are looking at seeking that advice rather than going off and doing their own thing, so to speak. So I'm very, very pleased to see this happening, and I'm very, very pleased to see the amount of people that are actually coming forward to Bathurst Regional Council and asking for advice and asking for help. So I'd like to congratulate the planning department on what they've got available in their area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rudge. Any more discussion? Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the Bathurst Region CBD Main Street Improvement Fund, I know the Heritage Reference Group is very keen for some of this funding to go to signage issues. We've had ongoing discussions with the business in Russell Street, and we've explained all these wonderful things that they can get funding for. I just don't think it's gone any further. So, and it's just sad that 50,000 was not expended. And when we're trying very hard to improve and upgrade the signage of Bathurst. So I think that we need to encourage more businesses to fund better signage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, item number 7, the Bathurst Backyard Bird Count results of 2019 program. A mover and a seconder. Councillor Morse, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
it's been really successful and it's been a wonderful program when you look at the figures. But I have had one question from a ratepayer, and that's it's not in the main list of birds found, but the common minor bird is becoming a problem, and it's an increasingly aggressive bird. And the question from a ratepayer was, is council keeping an eye on the increase of minor birds, and if so, are they preparing a program for trapping them?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, indeed, the backyard bird count is one of the tools to keep track of that. Bathurst is not yet contemplating a trapping program. I know that other councils do. A pessimist would say it's only a matter of time, but of course that will require the resources that will be necessary to maintain that vigilance.
Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go on to item number 8. Variations to the fees and revenue policy. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hanger, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to the Director of Corporate Services and Finance report. Statement of investments. Will I have a mover and a second? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, the monthly review, delivery plan and operational plan. Could I please have a mover and a second? Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, power of attorney. Can I please have a mover and a second? Councillor Orban, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to the Director of Engineering Services report. Restrictions on the use of the land, Lot 6 in DPI 184118 at Purfell. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Rudge, Councillor North. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, water security update. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Christian. Any discussion? Councillor Fry.
Mr. Mayor, for the engineer, just the last item, the drilling of investigative boreholes. And I think I remember saying that the 4 holes returned low yield. Is it possible, and again, given my previous comments on the potential of recharging the floodplain gravels, the aquifers, from the Vale catchment all the way down, and I personally believe that we can store many megalitres of water in these floodplain gravels. And me going back, 50 years when I used to go out the waterworks fishing, and I could remember there was tunnels and wells and all sorts of things, and I remember seeing water in those. Again, it's pretty vague, but I believe the water table was a lot higher back then, and it's dropped significantly as the bed of the Macquarie drops and as the flows change. Is it possible to put a bit more focus on that floodplain gravel aquifers and storing that water in effectively what the Minister called an underground dam? And we're having a water hookup tomorrow, and we'll put that question to the Minister. But is it possible to concentrate a bit more of our capacity on, I know we only had a budget for these holes, but is it possible to look at historical data, things like I just mentioned, and possibly a desktop study, and maybe some other consultants, just to look further into the potential of raising that aquifer. And I believe that our intake works at the waterworks probably does raise the aquifer in that local zone, and that would indicate if we put another number of steps in the creek beds from the vale, as I previously said, down the river, is it possible we could, given all the approvals and all that, and including that the weir between the two bridges, even reinstating that weir, say a metre high, would potentially reinstate all those floodplain aquifers. And again, we looked at the brick pits the other week, and I can always remember being water in there, and that reflected the level of the floodplain aquifers. And now I've never seen it so low and so dry. And I just think it's a critical resource that we're probably putting not enough focus on. And there is a well out at St Pat's that we've always monitored the level, and it's very low at this stage. So the question is, can we put a bit more focus on the aquifer and try and ask the department to fund some weirs with the aim of recharging the aquifers, and then later being able to, in an emergency, take that water out and put it into our holding ponds. So I don't know, is it possible to put a bit more focus on that particular thing?
I'll get the director to answer that.
Through Mr Mayor, the current funding that we have available for the investigation of our critical water needs is unlikely to extend to aquifer recharge. However, that's certainly something that we're aware of, and should there be additional funding available, we can certainly consider it. Council has previously sought to have the JC's weir reinstated, and the advice at a ministerial level has been no. So we would have to have that revisited as well, but it would require, no doubt, lengthy approval processes. Noting too that the bore location that we used for investigation was close to the weir pool at the water filtration plant intake at that higher level of river level due to the weir being there.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Christian?
Only that reading this report is basically just a very good news story. I failed to mention it last time we were in council, but the amount of work that this council has done to ensure our water security is just unbelievable. We've got the strengthening of the Wimbledale Dam wall, stormwater harvesting, pipeline improvements, underground and bore water investigation. We've left no stone unturned, and I think it's really important that the community are aware of that. You know, I'm one of them. It's easy to get negative about the water situation, talking about the critical needs list and some other frustrations with the state government. But I think this council has just done an incredible job. We got some flack out in the community sometimes. You know, council should have done more in regards to water, and we're in this mess because of inaction. Well, Bathurst wasn't an area that went through severe droughts. It's really that simple. But as soon as we were faced with this problem, council stood up and took the ball forward and has done a lot of really, really good work. I mean, I wish I could give everyone in this city this report, because it just outlines what excellent work that not only the staff do, but, and you've copped it a bit, Mr Mayor, and so have you, Deputy Mayor, but I think it reflects the leadership of the council. This is all happening under our watch, and we're kicking goals. So when people look back, it'll be us that were here. We did what was required to ensure our water security. So I think a big congratulations to everyone involved.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor Orban?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I know we loathe comparing Orange and Bathurst all the time, because it's a lot of things is what we do. But Orange does do one thing that I think we should be looking at doing, and that is they've got the notification boards that say what their literage per person usage is, and it's way up on what ours is. I mean, we're down to 129. They were still raving about 140 something when I was through there on Friday, and I came through there last night, and I just want to ask the question to the director: do you know the comparison, what our water holding capacity is compared to Orange? What's the total capacities of each city? Do you know?
Director.
You know what orange is anyway.
I'm taking you mean in terms of total capacity of the storage. To be honest, right now off the top of my head, no, I can't provide a direct answer, but I'm happy to provide that on notice.
Right, okay, because there's a billboard up there in Orange last night saying that their water capacity is sitting at 28.7%. So, you know, I think, as Councillor Christian just said, we are doing a really good job. The people of this city are doing a really good job in complying with their usage of the water. And I'd just like to see people be congratulated for that and get it out in lights. I mean, we're up Orange like rat up a drain pipe. I mean, even when it comes to our wages, we you know, we're on equal terms now. So, but honestly, I'd love to see some congratulations out there for the community and just to show what we are doing as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Is there any more discussion? Councillor.
Just to ask, the issue with the application to NRA regarding Wimbledale Dam, which sort of almost has the potential to make Wimbledale Dam marginally useful or not useful at all. Is there any updates since this was reported?
Through you, Mr Mayor, with council staff, including myself, are having discussions with NRA tomorrow to pursue that matter, and upon completion of that discussion, we'll determine our options moving forward.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, update no smoking policy and for playgrounds. Have a move in a second. Councillor North, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? There's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, update of sporting fields, temporary goalposts on council playing fields. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hanger, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? There's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 5, pesticide notification plan. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Christians, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that we still do use pesticides around the city, and I think we should bear in mind that a lot of European cities have banned it. A lot of councils around Australia are banning agricultural chemicals and biocides, and there's a lot of our overseas trading partners by 2022-23 will start to refuse to take our agricultural products because of the high-risk chemicals contained in that food. So I just think we should get on board and start setting an example. And I'm just asking the engineer if we could phase out using toxic chemicals in our LGA. I know the Upper Macquarie is a whole other thing, but the one question is, are we able to add dye to the toxic chemicals we use around the playgrounds and streets and parks, just to let people know that there has been a toxic chemical used and to keep children or pets away from it? Is it possible to put dye in our chemical if we don't already?
Director.
Through Mr Mayor, whilst it's possible, a lot of our herbicide use is on concrete and in terms of weeding of paths and gravel paths, etc. And so the dye would then leave somewhat of a more permanent stain. This report is really about the notification process that we go through for the use of herbicides and pesticides in or by council, not across the LGA, but by council staff themselves and our contractors. As a whole, we're not a big user of chemicals, but we still need to follow an appropriate process to notify the public when we use them.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Christian.
Yeah, just on that, to the Director of Engineering, if we didn't use pesticides, what other option would there be? Goats? I mean...
In terms of herbicides, certainly and pesticides, we only use what are currently legally available to use in Australia, and so we obviously monitor that list, and should those chemicals change, we no longer use them. The chemicals that we use, again, we use very sparingly. We're not a big user, and when we use them, it is because there are limited other alternatives.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to Director of Cultural and Community Services report. Councillor Jennings.
Just declare a non-pecuniary interest in this one, Mr. Mayor. I happen to be married to Dr. Kate Smith, who was shortlisted and selected as one of the community peers in this item.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Hanger. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rudge.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. As councillors will be aware, the Bathurst Public Art Policy was endorsed by Council on the 17th of April 2019. So it's been a bit of a wait getting this all together, getting this committee together. However, it will be worth it. Expressions of interest are sought through Council and Bathurst Regional Art Gallery, websites, art networks, social media, etc. We were overwhelmed to the fact that 19 members of the community responded to Council's recent call, and all of them had a broad range of skills and expertise. The three community peers that have been shortlisted will help the committee in the public art policy document. But I'd also like to add that the remaining 16 interested persons will be placed on a peer register and will be called upon to advise the Public Art Policy Committee on an as-needs basis. So we've been well aware of what these people can bring to the table, and we're certainly not taking that away. So they will be called upon as needs, as their skills apply. So I'm looking forward to get this up and running, and I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Roach. Is there any more discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, the Tourism Industry Engagement Framework. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North. Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 8, there's no notice of motions, General Manager. No rescission motions, General Manager. We go to item number 10, Councillors' Delegate Reports. Could I please have a mover for the minutes of the Bathurst Community Safety Committee on the 18th of June? Councillor Rudge. Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against? Carried. Item number 2, the minutes of the Bathurst Regional Youth Council on the 9th of June. A mover and a second, Councillor Morse, Councillor Christian. Any discussion? There's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against? Carried. Item number 11, we resolve into confidential committee of a whole to deal with confidential reports. Councillors, we now go into that. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Are there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as to whether the matter should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee? As there are no representation, now I'll put the motion to go into confidential committee. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Could I please
Mr Mayor, Council has just met in closed session and the following resolutions were passed. With respect to item 1, signage at Mount Panorama, the Council endorsed the General Manager's action in executing the lease agreement under power of attorney as per the terms detailed in this report. Item number 2, request for financial assistance, Harvest Cafe. The Council delegate the authority to the General Manager to finalise the request for financial assistance, Harvest Cafe, subject to a report coming back to Council for final approval. Item 3, financial statements, Bathurst 12 Hour, that the information be noted. Item 1 of the Director of Engineering's confidential reports, proposed easement at Gormans Hill, that Council approved the proposed easement for water supply 3 wide on lot 11 in DP 1159190 at Gormans Hill Road, Gormans Hill. And B, approve the terms proposed as detailed in the Director of Engineering Services report. Item number 2, variation to recycling contract, that Council A, note the actions outlined in the Director of Engineering Services report, and B, endorse the General Manager's actions in accepting the variation and completing and forwarding the necessary documentation. And item 3, annual tenders, stormwater drainage pipes, that the tender from Rockler Pipeline Products for supply of stormwater drainage pipes, headwalls and lintels, contract number 36.000687, be terminated by mutual agreement between Council and Rockler without prejudice, effective immediately. And B, that Council calls fresh tenders immediately.
Thank you, General Manager. Now, councillors, we need to adopt the items of the committee as a whole in the confidential session. Could I please have a move and a second? Councillor North and Councillor Hanger. Put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. The meeting closed now at 7:30 on the dot. Thank you, councillors. Could I please